Anshi awoke disoriented on the cold, hard floor of her basement. Her mind felt foggy, still entangled in the haze of sleep. She assumed she had been sleepwalking again. With heavy eyes, she stumbled towards her room, where she collapsed onto her bed, sinking back into a deep, comforting slumber. The peacefulness of the early morning was abruptly interrupted at 7 a.m. by the persistent chime of the doorbell. Ting-tong. The sound was far more jarring than the gentle alarm clock on her bedside table. Anshi, who valued her sleep, was irked by such an unwelcome disturbance. The doorbell rang again, louder this time. Ting-tong. Ting-tong. Reluctantly, Anshi dragged herself out of bed, her eyes still heavy with sleep. She grabbed a small utensil from her bedside table and shuffled to the door. But when she opened it, she found nothing but an empty porch. She sighed, closed the door, and trudged back to her bed. A minute later, the doorbell rang once more. Ting-tong. Frustrated, Anshi opened the door again, only to find no one there. She peered out into the dimly lit corridor, scanning both directions. The hallway was deserted. Resigned, she returned to her bed. The little girl. As Anshi was drifting back to sleep, the doorbell rang again, disrupting her fleeting peace. Determined to catch the culprit behind the incessant ringing, she marched to the door, her frustration mounting. She flung it open and scanned the area, checking the stairs and corridors, but found no one. Descending the stairs, she noticed a small girl gripping the railing, seemingly lost in thought. "Did you ring the doorbell?" Anshi demanded. The little girl looked up with vacant eyes. Realizing that the child was too short to reach the doorbell, Anshi felt a pang of embarrassment and turned back towards her room. Resolute to catch whoever was responsible, she grabbed a sturdy club and stationed herself by the door, ready for action. "This prank is going to cost you," she muttered to herself, her patience wearing thin. When the doorbell rang again, Anshi swung the door open with a fierce shout, "Gotcha!" But to her dismay, the porch was still empty. How is this even possible? She wondered aloud, a cloud of unease settling over her. She considered calling her parents, but they were on vacation in Darjeeling, and she didn't want to disrupt their peaceful getaway. The doorbell's relentless ringing was unnerving. She grabbed her phone, only to find there was no signal. Desperately, she reached for the landline, but it too was dead. The television was nothing but static. Frustrated and scared, she pressed the doorbell herself, but the loud chime reverberated through the house, its tone unchanged. It seemed to be working fine, which only deepened her confusion and dread. The watchman. With no other options, Anshi decided to seek help from the building's watchman. She raced down the stairs, calling out, "Rajesh! Rajesh!" The watchman turned and looked at her, but did not respond immediately. "Watchman," she called again, her voice tinged with frustration. The watchman, a man she didn't recognize, sprang to attention. "Yes, ma'am?" Anshi asked, "Where's Rajesh?" The watchman looked puzzled. "Rajesh? I don't know a Rajesh." "The watchman?" she clarified. "I am the watchman, ma'am," he replied, a bit taken aback. Anshi decided to let it go and asked him to send someone to check her doorbell. "It's been ringing continuously," she explained. The watchman assured her he would get it checked. Before he could leave, Anshi inquired about the television issue. The watchman shrugged. "No idea, ma'am." Realizing he might not have a phone, she asked to borrow his, but he said he didn't own one. Frustrated, she gave up on the idea. "Just send someone as soon as possible," she urged, her anxiety growing. Deciding she needed a break, Anshi opted to take a walk. The park. At the park, she found a bench and sat down, trying to calm her racing thoughts. Suddenly, she noticed someone sitting beside her. It was her college professor. "Sir? What are you doing here?" she asked, puzzled. The professor stared blankly ahead, lost in his own world. "Are you feeling okay? How's your heart condition?" she asked, concerned. He remained silent, tears streaming down his face. He reached out and placed his hand gently on her head, his expression one of profound sadness. "Sir, what's wrong?" Anchi asked, alarmed by his tears. He buried his face in his hands and sobbed uncontrollably. Anchi felt uncomfortable, glancing around to see if anyone else noticed. She tried to console him, but he stood up abruptly and walked away. Anchi called after him, but he didn't stop. Confused and unsettled, Anchi returned to her apartment. The watchman was still not there, and she assumed he had gone to find an electrician or someone who could help. The little girl again. On her way upstairs, Anchi encountered the little girl again, still clutching the railing, tears flowing down her cheeks. "What's wrong, dear? Why are you crying?" Anchi asked gently. The girl wiped her tears and asked, "Have you seen my mommy?" Anchi's heart ached for the child. She learned the girl's name was Ja and that she lived on the same floor. Anchi took Ja to her apartment, where the little girl pointed to a door. Ja tried to reach the doorbell and knob but was too short. Anchi rang the doorbell for her. Ting tong. They waited, but no one answered. Anchi turned the knob, and the door creaked open. The apartment was empty. Ja ran to her room to find her teddy bear, leaving Anchi alone. "Do you want to come with me?" Anchi offered, but Ja preferred to stay in her own home. Back to her room. Reluctantly, Anchi left Ja behind and returned to her room. She sank into her bed with her favorite book but barely started reading when the doorbell rang again. Ting tong. Assuming it might be the electrician, she dashed to the door, but once again, there was no one. "Damn it," she shouted, exasperated. Determined to catch the prankster, she left the door open, sitting just inside and watching. She turned on the TV, which was still just static, and smashed it in frustration. The flower vase on top of the TV toppled and shattered. Anchi shut the door, feeling a wave of hopelessness. She buried herself in her pillow and blanket, tears streaming down her face. Suddenly, she felt a weight on her bed as though someone had jumped beside her. She turned around, but the bed was empty. Panicked, she bolted from her room and ran down to the basement. She tripped and fell, landing hard. As she looked around, her eyes widened in horror. Her body lay on the basement floor. Shocked and unable to speak, she scrambled away, screaming in terror. It was around 4 a.m. when Anchi's parents, the Suras, returned from their vacation. They used their spare keys to enter the house, not wanting to disturb Anchi. Finding her room locked as usual, they decided to let her sleep and went to bed themselves. At 7 a.m., the doorbell rang. Shika, assuming it was the milkman, went to answer it. Ting tong. Why can't he ring just once? It's Anchi's sleeping time, she muttered. The milkman replied, "I'm sorry, madam. I'll remember next time." Shika rolled her eyes and shut the door, returning to bed. Moments later, the doorbell rang again. It was the newspaper delivery person asking for the month's payment. Shika took care of it and went back to bed. Mahesh, already disturbed by the ringing, decided to go for his morning jog. Returning from the morning walk. Mahesh returned from his jog an hour later to find Shika waiting with tea and the newspaper. Mahesh looked troubled and mentioned that someone in the park had told him about Mishra's missing daughter. She had been missing for 4 days, with no news about her. "I need to visit them," Mahesh said. "It doesn't feel right not to check in." Shika agreed, and Mahesh left to visit the Mishras. He rang the doorbell again, sweaty and anxious, and changed into fresh clothes before heading out. Shika, busy with household chores, heard the doorbell ring urgently while she was in the bathroom. Ting tong. Ting tong. Coming, she shouted as she opened the door, but to her surprise, there was no one there. She knocked on Anchi's door, calling for her to wake up since it was already 10 a.m. Then she went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. Deep within a dense and mysterious forest lies an ancient totem shrouded in dark secrets from the past. Since the 13th century, this totem has silently witnessed horrific tragedies involving the sacrifice of 3 souls. In an effort to preserve this invaluable heritage, a brave archaeological team is dispatched to investigate the totem. Little do they realize that they are about to fall victim to a terrifying curse that has haunted this place for centuries. Welcome to the chilling tale of Curse of the Totem 2023. The discovery of the totem. In the heart of a remote and inaccessible forest, the archaeological team led by Dr. Suraya Abdullah arrives, eager to explore the ancient totem known as the Forbidden Site. This totem is steeped in a grim history, where human sacrifice was once a ritual of the Lano Aliko Sarawak tribe in the 13th century. Amidst the eerie silence of the forest, Dr. Suraya and her team begin to sense an unsettling presence. Strange noises echo through the trees, and a growing sense of dread envelops them. Signs of doom. A few days after their arrival, Arjuna B and Hannah find themselves trapped in the depths of the mysterious forest. Arjuna, who is sketching various animals like owls, bats, and snakes, shares the Melanau belief that these creatures are harbingers of doom. They are then contacted by Dr. Sani, who requests permission to join the expedition and conduct further research on the totem. Meanwhile, the tension within the team escalates as they begin to experience signs of malevolent spirits. Arrival at the village. Upon reaching the nearest village, the team is greeted by the village chief, Madui, who explains that Nula, an elderly woman in the village, is considered insane and has inherited dark incantations from her mysteriously vanished father. Madui invites the team for lunch and provides deeper insights into the totem's background. They learn that the totem is closely linked to horrific human sacrifices, where a male and female slave were once ritually offered. Rituals and madness. As the team embarks on their expedition to the totem, they encounter a series of bizarre events. B spots a mysterious girl by the riverbank, but she vanishes before he can approach. In the forest, they discover the abandoned camp of a previous expedition, complete with notes and books detailing terrifying information. Tommy, who is trying to find ghosts, only exacerbates the situation with his fake recordings. The tension reaches a breaking point when Arjuna becomes possessed and Tommy, who is lost, discovers the bodies of Suraya and her team. Sacrifice and curse. As night falls, the atmosphere around the totem becomes increasingly ominous. Hannah senses the presence of terrifying faces within the totem's hole, while Arjuna suffers a serious accident when the totem collapses on him. They come to realize that the totem's curse is not just a legend, but a grim reality they must confront. Meanwhile, Nula performs a ritual to protect the totem, but her presence becomes even more enigmatic. Confrontation and truth. When the team returns to the village chief's home, they uncover that Madui is a descendant of the treacherous chief Gebwang Alao, with a hidden agenda. Madui reveals his plan to sell the ancestral land and conceal the truth about the disappearance of the previous expedition team. Hannah, attempting to escape, is captured and brutally treated by Madui. Meanwhile, Sani tries to locate B and uncover the secret behind the totem's curse. Death and revelation. At the climax of the conflict, B and Sani find themselves battling against evil spirits and the curse haunting the totem. B, trapped in visions of the past, faces the horrors involving Matala, a sacrificed slave girl. They witness how Matala cursed the descendants of the chief who betrayed her. As Madui attempts to flee, B is forced to make a final, decisive choice to end the curse. In their struggle against the curse that haunts the totem, the archaeological team confronts the horrifying truths of a buried past. However, not all of them survive the ordeal. In a bitter lesson, they realize that some curses cannot be lifted and some secrets are better left buried in darkness. Curse of the Totem 2023 leaves us with profound questions about fate, sacrifice, and the boundaries between life and death.